Throughout history, we humans have always been fascinated with the desire to discover something new. Curiosity is a feature that is imprinted in our DNA. From time immemorial, we have been fascinated by the sky. The motion of the stars and planets have intrigued many a great thinkers. The need to study about space was not only fueled by the fascination of visiting other planets, but also to understand about how space can be used in a peaceful manner for the betterment of all human beings. Over the past few decades, humans have understood the immense potential opened up by artificial satellites towards the growth of human civilization. Artificial satellites are human made objects which move around a planet at very high speeds at predetermined locations called as orbits. They help us to study the Earth, other planets, to help us communicate, and even to observe the distant universe. Rockets are the vehicles which helps to take these satellites to their correct location in space. We humans now have the capability to develop powerful, efficient, and safe rockets to take satellites and humans to outer space and beyond. The objective of this module is to understand how rockets are able to steer itself starting from the ground and reach its destination accurately. In order to understand how a rocket is able to steer itself from its starting position to reach its destination, let us make use of a very simple example. Imagine that you are traveling in a car. You want to go from your starting position to your destination by following the road ahead. How do we do it? First of all, we need to understand where we are currently. In order to understand this, we make use of our senses, that is our eyes, in order to scan the surroundings and understand our current position. After knowing where we are, we need to know where to go next. These days, we make use of services such as Google Maps to tell us where to go next. So it tells us whether to go straight, whether to take a left turn, or whether to take a right turn. So now we know our current position, we know where to go next, and this information is processed by our brain to determine how much we need to rotate the steering wheel to get us back on the correct path. At the same time, we make use of our legs to control the accelerator and the brakes to control the speed of the vehicle. So let's go through this once again to have a more clearer understanding of it. So in order to reach our destination, the first question that we need to answer is, where am I currently at? So as I said before, while driving we make use of our eyes in order to understand our current position. So our eye is a sensor. So what is a sensor? A sensor is any device which measures a physical property from our environment and then converts it into electrical data which we can measure. So here our eyes are able to take the data from the environment and then it converts into electrical signals which our brain can read. So this process whereby we are able to answer the question of where am I is called as navigation. After understanding where we are currently at, we need to decide where to go next. So as I said before, we can make use of Google Maps to guide us on the correct path to our destination. So this process which tells us where to go next in order to reach our destination is called as guidance. So now we know where we are currently at and we also know where to go next. So our brain makes a decision of how much to turn the steering wheel to stay in the correct path. So in this case, our brain acts like an autopilot. The autopilot gives instructions to our hand muscles to turn the steering wheel at the correct angle to help us reach our destination effectively. In the context of a rocket, our hand muscles will be referred to as actuators. So along with controlling the steering wheel, the autopilot, that is our brain, will give suitable instructions to our legs to control the accelerator as well as the brakes in order to control the speed of the vehicle. So now let us apply what all we have learned in the case of controlling a car to the case of controlling a rocket. Here we can see one of ISRO's rocket, that is the GSLV Mark III, lifting off from the launch pad in Sriharikota. The final destination of the rocket is at 350 km above the Earth's surface in order to launch a satellite into orbit. So in order to reach its destination, the rocket follows a path which is shown in red. In the rest of the module, we will be trying to understand how the rocket is able to move from its starting position, that is at liftoff, to its final position, that is at the orbit, and then release the satellite into the predetermined orbit to achieve its mission. So now let's go through an animation which explains the process. Here we can see GSLV Mark III rocket launching itself from the launch pad. So the starting point is the launch pad and the final destination is the orbit in which the satellite has to be deployed. On the right side, you can see the path that is to be taken by the rocket to reach its destination. So the rocket, one thing to note is that the rocket does not move in a straight line to reach its final destination, but rather moves in a curved path. So the reason why the rocket moves in a curved path will be covered in subsequent modules. So the path in which the rocket should move is predetermined and pre-calculated, and the rocket uses its muscles, that is the actuators, to steer it through the correct path towards the required destination. As you can see, the rocket rotates in a very controlled manner and it is also very stable throughout the entire flight. So finally, the rocket has reached its destination, that is the orbit in which it has to deploy the satellite. So once it has reached the orbit, once it has received a confirmation for it, it will deploy the satellite into the required orbit. Now let us come to the major systems which are involved in the navigation, guidance and control of a rocket. So here we can see a picture of another ISRO's rocket, that is a GSLV Mark II. So for moving from its starting position to its destination, it has to answer the first question, that is where is it currently at. So as in similarly in the case of a car, the rocket has sensors which are located on the top portion of the rocket in order to answer the question of where am I, and the process of answering this question is called as navigation. After knowing its current position, the rocket should be able to tell which is the next position it should move to. So this process is called as guidance. The autopilot, that is the brain of the rocket, takes the input of where it is currently at and where it should be in order to generate the required steering input to move the rocket in the correct direction. The control power plants of the rocket, that is the muscles of the rocket or the actuators of the rocket, are responsible for steering the rocket in the correct direction based on the input given to it from the autopilot. The actuators of the rocket are attached to the nozzle of the rocket. The nozzle here you can see is a conical part that is located at the bottom of the rocket. So the nozzle is part of the propulsion system of the rocket and helps to channel the combustion products which are generated by the propulsion system. Moving the nozzle using the control power plant, that is the actuator, helps to steer the rocket in the correct direction. So the details of this we will be covering in the subsequent parts. As we have discussed before, all the three systems, that is the navigation, guidance and control, are equally responsible for helping the rocket to get to its final destination by following the predetermined path. Let us see another animation explaining how the navigation, guidance and control work together to help the rocket move in its correct path. So here we can see a rocket that is moving in its predetermined path to its destination. Due to some external force acting on the rocket is deviated from its correct path. The navigation understands that the rocket is moved away from its predetermined path and the autopilot takes corrective action in order to bring back the rocket to its correct path. In order to understand how the control system of the rocket functions, it is necessary to understand all the forces that are acting on the rocket as it moves through the atmosphere. The first force is called as lift. Lift acts in a direction perpendicular to the direction of motion of the rocket, and it acts on the body due to the interaction of the rocket and the atmosphere. Similarly, drag is also a force that acts on the body of the rocket due to its interaction with the atmosphere. The drag acts in a direction opposite to the direction of motion and thus opposes motion. Weight is the force generated by gravity on the rocket. The weight of the rocket acts through its center of gravity. Thrust is the force which pushes the rocket forward. So, thrust force is generated when fuel is combusted in the propulsion chamber and it is ejected out of the nozzle at very high speeds. In order to understand whether our design of the rocket is stable or unstable as it moves through the atmosphere, we need to understand the relative position between 2 points on the rocket body. So these are the CP and CG. So CG, as I have told earlier, the center of gravity of the rocket body, and it is a point through which the weight of the body acts. Whereas Cp is the point through which the cumulative of the aerodynamic forces acts. In order for a rocket to be stable as it moves through the atmosphere, the Cg has to be always in front of Cp. So as you can see, the rocket which is given on the left hand side has a stable flight path and moves in a straight line. So for this rocket, the Cg is ahead of Cp. Whereas for the rocket which is shown on the right hand side, Cp is ahead of Cg and the rocket has an unstable flight path. A rocket body can have rotations in three different axes. So in order to explain these rotations, we would be making use of an aircraft. The first rotation is the roll. So the roll happens through an axis which passes through the body of the aircraft and which splits the aircraft into two symmetric halves. So in case of roll, the tip of the wings move either up or down. The second motion is called as yaw, in which the nose and the tail of the aircraft move in a left to right direction. Finally, the pitch of the aircraft occurs when the nose moves up and down. Now let's understand the rolling as well as pitching motion that is happening in a launch vehicle. First of all, we have discussed earlier the case of roll, pitch, yaw in case of an aircraft. So aircrafts have special aerodynamic surfaces called as control surfaces, which are presented on the surface of the body of the aircraft, which help it to undergo roll, yaw as well as pitching motion. As you can see here on the bottom right corner, the aircraft is undergoing a yaw maneuver, and in order to help the aircraft to undergo a yaw maneuver, you can see a black control surface which is present on the tail of the aircraft. As and when the control surface moves, the nose of the aircraft moves in the left as well as right direction. So there are different names for these control surfaces: aileron, rudders, elevator, etc. And these control surfaces are used by aircraft because an aircraft never leaves the atmosphere, and a control surface only works when it has air to interact with. So now let us come to the case of a launch vehicle. In case of a launch vehicle, mostly the control of the steering angle is basically achieved either through thrust vector control or either through propellant flow control. So here first let's see what rolling as well as pitching look like in a launch vehicle. First rolling, next pitching. There are two ways by which we can control the direction in which the rocket moves forward. The first is the thrust vector control. Thrust vector control is achieved by moving the nozzle of the rocket using actuators in the appropriate direction. Fuel undergoes combustion in the propulsion system of the rocket and gets ejected out of the rocket at very high velocities through the nozzle. By controlling the angle at which the combustion products are allowed to go out of the rocket through the nozzle, we will be able to control the direction of motion of the rocket. In this module, we will be mainly focusing on thrust vector control. Now let's understand how the rocket is able to take a turn and then accurately track a path towards its destination. So in the picture shown in the middle, you can see that the rocket is moving straight upwards without any kind of deviation. So in order to move the rocket towards either towards the left or either towards the right, we have to rotate the nozzle of the rocket using actuators. Now let's come to the picture on the right. So we need to rotate the rocket by a small angle towards the right. So in order to achieve this, we rotate the nozzle of the rocket to a small angle using our actuators. So this creates an angle between the thrust line as well as a line that is passing through the center of the rocket. So this angle causes a rotating moment to act on the center of gravity of the rocket, called as the torque. So a torque acts on the center of gravity of the rocket, causing the rocket to rotate slightly towards the right. As long as the torque exists, the rocket will continue to move towards the right hand side. Similarly, on the left hand side, you can see that the rocket takes a turn towards the left. In order to take the turn towards the left, the nozzle of the rocket appropriately turns. So this causes a rotating moment or torque to act on the center of gravity to cause the rocket to turn towards the left. Now let's discuss the major thrust vector control systems which are used in ISRO launch vehicles. The first one is the engine gimbal control system. So this type of a thrust vector control system is mostly used for liquid engines. So the whole rocket engine is mounted on a rotatable joint, and the nozzle along with the rocket is attached to a suitable actuator, and then by controlling the angle of the engine, we are able to control the steering angle of the rocket. Next, we will discuss about the flex nozzle control system. So these type of control systems are mostly used when the fuel used for combustion is in solid state. So here the nozzle is mounted on a specially designed spring-like structure called as a flex seal. So the flex seal is a specially designed spring-like structure which is made up of metal as well as rubber. The nozzle is attached to a suitable muscle, that is the actuator, in order to control the exit angle of the propellants. By controlling the exit angle of the propellants, we will be able to control the steering angle of the rocket. The next method of thrust vector control is the vernier engine. So here there will be a main engine which will be providing the required thrust for the rocket to move forward. So along with the main engine, there will be several smaller engines called as vernier engines. By making use of suitable actuators, we will be able to control the angle of the vernier engine and thus control the angle of the exit flow from these engines. So by making use of this, we will be able to control the steering angle of the rocket. The last method used by ISRO for thrust vector control is the secondary injection thrust vector control system. So the secondary injection control system is mainly used in case where the fuel is in solid state. There would be a primary nozzle through which the products of combustion are allowed to exit to the atmosphere. So there will be several side channels in which we will be able to introduce side flows into the main nozzle. So the interaction between the main flow as well as the side flow creates side forces which causes the rocket to move in the required direction. As you might have noticed, so the engine gimbal control system, the flex nozzle control system and the vernier engine type control system all uses a suitable type of actuator to move the nozzle. whereas in secondary injection thrust vector control, the nozzle is stationary and the steering angle of the rocket is achieved by introducing side flows into the main nozzle. A very important component of the control power plant is the actuator. So, an actuator can be referred to as any device that converts the input energy into suitable mechanical energy which can be used for doing work. So, we will be mainly discussing about three types of actuators. So, one is an actuator which makes use of electrical energy to do work. So, this is most commonly seen in wiper motors of cars. You can see an electric actuator is used in wiper motors of cars. The next is a hydraulic actuator. So hydraulic actuator makes use of fluid under very high pressure in order to do mechanical work. So this is most commonly seen in excavators in order to lift huge amounts of mass. Next, let's discuss about the pneumatic actuator. So, pneumatic actuator in principle is similar to hydraulic actuator, but instead of making use of a liquid at high pressure, a pneumatic actuator makes use of air at high pressure to do mechanical work. So, these are most commonly seen in the automatic closing doors of buses. So, a suitable actuator is chosen. It is attached to the nozzle of the rocket in order to control the angle of the exit flow of the rocket, and by controlling the angle of the nozzle we will be able to control the steering angle of the rocket. What are the different types of actuators? So as I have told before, a pneumatic actuator makes use of air under high pressure in order to do mechanical work. A hydraulic actuator makes use of a liquid under very high pressure in order to do mechanical work, whereas an electric actuator makes use of stored energy in a battery in order to do mechanical work, and a thermal actuator makes use of a heat source to do mechanical work. So you can see on the bottom of the slide there is a graph that shows the force as well as the displacement that are available from several different types of actuators. In launch vehicle applications, usually there is a requirement of very high force along with very high displacements. So under such conditions, we mostly make use of electromechanical actuators or hydraulic actuators to move the nozzle. We do not make use of pneumatic or thermal based actuators for steering control of launch vehicles. In case of rockets, mostly electro-hydraulic actuators as well as electromechanical actuators are used. So in case of an electro-hydraulic actuators, we make use of fluid under very high pressure in order to do mechanical work. A very simple explanation of the electro-hydraulic actuator is shown here. So the idea is to convert the fluid pressure into motion of a piston. So here we make use of a piston cylinder arrangement, and when we pressurize the area between the cylinder as well as the piston moves outward doing mechanical work. So correspondingly, when we drain out the fluid that is filling the space between the piston and the cylinder, the piston returns back to its original position. In an electromechanical actuator, we convert the rotary motion of a motor to a linear motion of an appropriate shaft. So we do this by making use of appropriate mechanisms called as roller screw mechanism, ball screw mechanism. Now let us understand how the rocket is able to control the angle of the nozzle by making use of actuators. So here a picture of a rocket engine is shown which uses liquid fuel. The engine as well as the nozzle is mounted on a freely movable joint, and the one end of the actuator is attached to the rocket and the other end of the actuator is fixed to the end of the nozzle. So here we can see two actuators which are attached to the nozzle, which helps the nozzle to move in two separate directions. Let's see a video in which the actuator is used for moving the nozzle. So here we can see that we are making use of an electromechanical actuator in order to move the nozzle in the specified direction. So this is a test that is done in order to evaluate the performance of the actuator. The location of the nozzle along with the actuator is shown in this video. So here it is a GSLV Mark III rocket and the nozzle is located at the middle of the rocket. So here we can see that the actuator is used in order for controlling the position of the nozzle. Let's understand how a flex nozzle control system works. So in a flex nozzle control system, the nozzle is mounted on a special spring-like structure. The actuators are attached to the nozzle and are used for controlling the position of the nozzle. So a flex nozzle control system is more commonly used in systems which makes use of solid fuel. Products of combustion are coming out through the nozzle at very high velocities. By making use of a suitable actuator, either electromechanical or electrohydraulic actuator, we are moving the nozzle in order to control the steering angle of the rocket. So this is also a test that is done in order to evaluate the performance of the propulsion system as well as the actuator. Here we can see the location of the solid rocket motor along with the flex seal nozzle and the actuator. As you can see, the actuator is used for controlling the position of the nozzle. So now we have gone through the main part of our control power plant, that is the actuator. So actuators are like the muscles of the rocket and which helps the rocket in order to move in the correct direction. Sensors and actuators are two very important components of any control system. A sensor is any device which is capable of measuring any physical property and then converting it into electrical energy which can be read by a suitable computer. So a physical property could be temperature, pressure, etc. Whereas an actuator receives an input in the form of electrical input and then it converts it into useful energy. Here is a list of all the operational vehicles of ISRO. So first is the PSLV, which stands for Polar Satellite Launching Vehicle. Next is GSLV, which stands for Geosynchronous Satellite Launching Vehicle. Third is GSLV Mark III, which stands for Geosynchronous Satellite Launching Vehicle Mark III. So this slide basically shows a list of all the actuators as well as its corresponding electronics for running the actuator for each stage of the rocket. So now let's go through it one by one. First stage of PSLV is a solid stage and makes use of SITVC mode of thrust vector control. The second stage of PSLV is a liquid stage and makes use of an electromechanical actuator for thrust vector control. The third stage is solid stage and makes use of an electromechanical actuator for steering control of the rocket. Finally, in the last stage, which is a liquid stage, an electromechanical actuator is used for steering control. In case of GSLV, the strap-on motors, that is the L40, makes use of electrohydraulic actuator. The second stage, which is a liquid stage, makes use of an electromechanical actuator. Finally, the cryogenic upper stage makes use of electromechanical actuators. Coming to GSLV Mark III, the solid rocket boosters makes use of electromechanical actuators for flex nozzle control. The core stage of GSLV Mark III, which is the L110, makes use of an electromechanical actuator for engine gimbal control. Finally, the last stage, which is a cryogenic stage, makes use of an electromechanical actuator for engine gimbal control.